Welcome to the Better Start podcast, where we have conversations about AI, software dev, and all kinds of new technology. I'm one of your hosts, Richard. I'm joined by...
I'm James.
I'm Andres.
And I'm Elliot.
Hey, thanks for joining us, Elliot. Like you mentioned offline, a lot of us are a big fan of your YouTube channels, both YouTube channels actually, so Dreams of Code and Dreams of Autonomy. And we'll get more into that in the podcast. But for those listening who have no idea who you are, you okay to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. So my name's Elliot. I run, two YouTube channels, as Richard mentioned. I've been doing YouTube now for about 3 years or so. But originally I started as a software developer. So I've been a software developer professionally since 2012. I was learning back in 2007 and then went to university to learn computer science. And it's been an absolute passion of mine ever since I was introduced to it. And so naturally, I now create videos about software development.
Nice. And I would say your software development is, or the videos you make are similar to the Primogen to a certain extent, because you do focus on terminal tools. And so have you always been a Neovim kind of terminal person, or did you kind of gradually get into that?
Yeah, so at university, we had a module on writing a compiler. And one of the prerequisites of that module was you had to do it through SSH into a Unix box using Vim. So that was like a crash course into, not only did you have to write a compiler in C++, but you also had to do it in Vim. And a lot of people learned to love it through, Stockholm syndrome, which was definitely for me as well. And so that's how I kind of learned Vim. I was still using IDEs at the time, but I had some Vim experience because of that module. And then my first ever job was SSHing into a Unix box. It was in finance, SSHing into a Unix box using Vim in C++. So I kind of just picked it up from there, and then ever since worked in Vim mostly. It was the one editor that could do pretty much anything. There was a time I was using Xcode because Apple tools, but other than that, it's mostly been Vim for me.
And there's been kind of a renaissance of Vim users, like more people on YouTube talking about it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think obviously Primogen has been huge for that. He's definitely encouraged a lot of other people to look at using Neovim and similar tools. But I think there's always been kind of a cohort of people that have always enjoyed it. Like before I was doing YouTube, before I even watched like programming YouTube or anything, there was people online always talking about tools and things like that. So there's always been a bit of a cult following about it. I guess Neovim and Emacs. I've tried Emacs. I didn't get on with it as much, but yeah.
Yeah, we had, I don't know if you know Bash Bunny, but we had her on a previous episode, and she's a huge fan of Doom Emacs. Yep. She was a Neovim user and then moved on to Doom Emacs because of the org mode, which I haven't tried yet, but she seems to enjoy.
Org mode is fantastic. It's incredible that there's nothing else quite like it. So when I was dabbling with Emacs, I wrote my entire Emacs init.l, which is like your configuration. I wrote it in org mode, so it was like documentation, but then every code block, you can have it so that whenever you save, the code block turns into an actual file, if that makes sense. So it's like, it's incredibly powerful for what you can do with it, and there's been nothing quite like it. And I guess that's because of eLisp that just enables that, yeah.
I was going to say, I must admit, I've never been a Vim or Neovim fan, but I think I might be slowly turning over because of AI, in the fact that Claude Code is writing obviously a lot of code for me. I hate opening up Cursor and the other tools now because they're filled with other AI stuff, but I use Claude Code and Codex in the terminal. I'm like, I just want to read the code. I don't want any of this AI stuff popping up in my face all the time. And like, if I want to make a small edit, I don't want the tab completion. And yeah, Cursor's starting to feel a bit like it's throwing all of everything it wants to sell me in my face. And I just want to literally read code and edit one line sometimes. So I might be slowly switching over, so...
Yeah, I think that's very relatable as well. And I think the fact, I guess you're working in the terminal also, so it just makes sense to kind of keep in the terminal. But yeah, I think that's one of the things I really like about Neovim at the moment. I don't have any AI auto-completion in there or anything like that. I just use it purely for reading the code, navigating the code, and like actually editing it when I want to edit it.
Nice. And I guess a lot of the other bits of content you make are focused around CLI tools. So I actually learned about zoxide from you. And what else? You've done multiple videos about different tools. So you made like top 10 weird ones like Croc, and you got some bonsai tool and all that stuff. So how do you find these tools, and like what made you kind of fall in love with certain tools?
Yeah. So how do I find them? That's a good question. I usually just lurk online quite a lot. And so I do a lot of active looking in different forums, seeing what other people are using, and then seeing if it solves a problem for me. Zoxide was a huge one because navigating in the terminal has always been rather painful. And then Zoxide, once you use it, you can never really go back, I think. The weird ones was a bit harder. I had to do a lot of deep dives and researches into that one. That one was because I did a previous one about popular ones, but most people know the popular CLI tools these days. And I really wanted to do one that was like a deep cut. And so I had to do a lot of research into figuring those. But I mean, GitHub stars, you can just look for CLI tools in GitHub. There's usually some good recommendations in there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big Zoxide fan as well, and I agree. Once you use it, you can't go back. I've used a new machine before that didn't have it yet, and I'll be like CD and trying to go to like one of my common directories. I'd be like, that's not in here. And I'm like, I need Zoxide. It's way quicker. It's way nicer.
Yeah. It's upsetting when you move to a new machine and you don't have that history.
Yeah. I think also I've kind of followed your arc into making a course platform on Go. Are you okay to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah. I actually changed it from Go recently, but I originally set out to do it using Go, which was, I think, good from an experience point of view. So it was around the time when HTMX was being very hyped, and I really wanted to give it a go and see, okay, is it feasible to use it in a larger project? And I think the results are mixed. I think you definitely can, but it starts to get challenging if you want to have more of a modern web experience, I found. Now, Go is actually very suited for it, especially with packages like Temple, which are incredible for creating more component-based view logic that you would typically find in, say, React or something like that. And with HTMX, when you're pulling it down from the server using kind of that hypermedia approach, it works pretty well. The challenge is if you want kind of more client-side interactivity, that's when things start to get a little bit more challenging. There's Alpine.js, which is pretty good for it. But I found at a certain point, the more complex you want to go, the more you're writing JavaScript in kind of that more vanilla approach, which I think I'm glad we kind of moved away from that, because I think that was harder than what we have now.
Yeah, so did you mean specifically like doing document.selectElement type stuff, or is this...
Yeah, document.selectElement, but even just kind of like organizing organizing JavaScript code properly. There's like a lot of gotchas that you have when you're just importing scripts and using it the way it used to be, rather than using kind of like a framework that helps you do that. I almost reached for jQuery, like it was that bad.
Yeah, I think there is I forgot what it's called, but there is there's a guy who is a big PHP Laravel guy who made a kind of equivalent to HTMX. I forgot what it's Alpine. You mentioned it, Alpine.js. He's got like this Alpine Ajax, which is a bit like HTMX. I don't know if you've heard of that. Yeah,
Alpine Ajax. I actually was considering moving to it because it would have been nice to have kind of everything in that Alpine ecosystem. But it looked very cool, Alpine Ajax. In the end, I ended up rewriting it in Next.js just because that was the time that agents came about. And I kind of jumped on Claude Code earlier than I think most people did, just to give it a go and see what it could do. And it was able to rewrite that Go website into Next.js pretty well. So I ended up moving to Next.js eventually because of that.
But quickly going back to the whole Go course platform.
Yes.
So I followed your kind of journey on building that. And I think as a YouTuber, there's always something you have to do on the side to like make real money. And I think the course platform is your alternative to that. And how have you found promoting that, building it, getting customers on it?
Yeah. Okay, so that's an interesting question. So I do the least amount of marketing, I think, for anybody that sells a product, which I think is like a fundamental flaw, because building a product is half the battle, but marketing it is the other half. So it's interesting because I really wanted to do a course, mainly to teach more about Go and kind of more how to actually build CLI applications with it, but I kind of go more into that systems level programming stuff as well and talk a lot about standard file streams, et cetera, kind of the things that you would pick up when building CLI applications, rather than just like, hey, use this framework, here's this tool. More going kind of a little bit like not as well with Go. Go doesn't go deep into kind of the operating system, but enough to understand more of that lower level, I guess, technical fundamentals. So how did I go about actually like turning that into a business? I think you're right. When it comes to YouTube itself is like very terrible when it comes to making money with AdSense. I think my AdSense revenue is like maybe a couple of $1,000s a month, which is okay, but it's not really livable in the US. So selling another product, the course for me was interesting because it made decent money, but I wouldn't say it was enough to kind of like do that full time as a career option. I think because one, AI has changed a lot of how people now learn to develop code or learn to write software. And again, I'm just not very good at marketing. I think if I marketed it very heavily, it would have been more of a successful product. When it comes to YouTube, I think the biggest way that most creators make money now is through sponsorships, right? And I think 3 sponsorships would have outpaid or made more money than the actual course itself would have.
Do you see that the course has like dried out now? People are not interested anymore in like learning a programming language?
Yeah, it still makes sales, which is cool. So it does still bring in some revenue. But I think compared to, it's hard to tell because I don't really talk about the platform as much. I still do a little bit of marketing just, with the links and stuff. But yeah, I think there's definitely been a decline. And you can kind of see when that was as well. As soon as agentic tools kind of took off, that's when I noticed sales decline because people don't want to learn as much as they did in the past.
You can see that across like coding tutorials on YouTube as well. Like the viewership has dropped off massively. I think Web Dev Simplified made a video recently about how his views have declined ever since AI existed because obviously a lot of his content was just tutorial based, and people don't seem to feel the need to learn anymore when AI will just do it for them.
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum because I think learning is still really important, but at the same time, I can understand that people might feel like it's a waste of time. I have so many thoughts about it, but I don't know really what the right answer is. I mean, I'm going back through the Rust book at the moment just to kind of refresh and relearn because I think it's still rather important to do so. And I think, I don't know, I have very mixed opinions about AI, as most people probably do. But I think ultimately learning is still really important, and I think it's worthwhile doing, even if the results feel like they're very abstract at the moment because AI is doing everything. I still think it's very good to have that foundational understanding and knowledge.
Yeah, I think AI will get you sort of only so far. It can build you a basic app that your one user can use, but the second you have to start scaling and optimizing things, I think that's where you need that foundational knowledge and new knowledge that you're picking up as well.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's a tough place to be because how do new people learn if AI can do all the writing of the code for you? And how do you encourage people to learn? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what people do nowadays. Because I'm thinking of, so I don't know any systems languages. Like I've messed around with Rust, but I don't know it very well. I'm thinking of trying out Zig because people say it's cool. And I was thinking, okay, so I could watch a YouTube course on Zig, or I could ask Claude to teach me Zig, and Claude teaching me would be quicker, but Claude would actually just write the code for me, and so I won't learn anything, and so it's a difficult place to be. But yeah, I don't know what people are going to do.
And it will hallucinate as well. That's the other problem.
Yeah.
That was what, I was going to say is basically like, I wouldn't trust AI to teach me something new because if you've ever asked an AI about something that you do know well, you sometimes see it makes mistakes. And I'm like, if I'm asking it to teach me something new, it could have that mistake in there and I'm just going to learn that and think it's true, which is pretty dangerous.
So how are you going about the Rust learning journey? Are you like switching off all autocompletes, all the agents, and just writing old school, in a terminal?
So I'm doing a mixture of both. So, I mean, I used to use Rust many years ago, and then I stopped. I moved more towards Go because I wanted to focus more on one language rather than having decision fatigue about which language to do. And also, as much as I love Rust, it's not the prettiest language to look at. It's harder to write good-looking code in it than not. And with YouTube, you want code that's easily readable and understandable when you're showing a concept or something. So I decided to move more towards Go, which was a lot easier to do that with. And I think more people wanted to kind of see and understand things. Like I used to get comments whenever I wrote Rust code that it was just hard to understand. So Go was a lot easier for that. So I'm kind of, I guess, relearning Rust, but I'm not coming from it from like a baseline of nothing. I'm picking up a lot of the skills that I used to have and used to understand and then applying that there. But I am trying to do more of that beginner's journey again. So, I mean, I picked up the Rust book and I'm reading it just at night. I am skipping a lot of the chapters that I kind of know already, but
What is the Rust book? What's the official title?
It's I think it's called the Rust book. let me look at it.
Okay.
It's on the website, but it's the main one that kind of everybody knows. It's No Starch Press. The Rust programming language. That's the official title. But yeah, people call it just the Rust book. So going through that again, but again, it's very foundational knowledge, and it will teach you the syntax. There's the Rustonomicon, which I really want to read, which is like the big one. That's like very difficult to go through, like notoriously hard. And then when it comes to projects, I'm working on like a video editor application at the moment that's built using Rust, and it's cross-platform, native, and using a lot of Rust frameworks, which is very cool. And I'm relying heavily on AI for that, but more from the documentation here sucks. How do I do something with it? Because AI is very good at going through the code, reading it, and pulling out the information. So a lot of the newer frameworks in Rust that are cross-platform just have terrible documentation. And so it's easy to get examples from AI to then implement it yourself. Initially, I relied on AI a little too much for that. So things like actually media rendering or video editing, like has timeline compositors and then rendering and things like that. And using AI for that was absolutely terrible. And that kind of got on to the point that James made earlier, that it's good at the simple stuff. And then as soon as you get to my kind of more non-trivial, I think it optimizes. I always say it tries to solve the symptom rather than the cause, if that makes sense. So it will try to like make something work, but it doesn't make it robust enough that you could actually build on top of it later. And I found that a lot with this project. It like worked, but the media pipeline just didn't exist. It was just like, here's playing a video file using like the basic APIs to do that. And then if you need to like do anything editor-wise, like skip or have multiple files, it just broke down very quickly. So a lot of my learning's been taking the done implementation and then making it correct.
Yeah, video editor does not sound like an easy task, even with AI's help. That is, I wouldn't give that one a go personally.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
How are you dealing with like different codecs and everything in the video editor?
So that is being deferred to. It depends on the platform. So Apple have AV Foundation, which is like their base audio video media toolkit. AV Foundation is really fantastic. It supports a lot of different codecs. So I have like a decoder module in the media engine where I can just swap out different decoders, and then AV Foundation is used on macOS. And thanks to Rust, you can use FFI, so you just hook into Objective-C code and then use that. It's unsafe Rust, but it's safe enough. And then for Windows and Linux, that's been a little bit more of a challenge because Windows has MF Foundation, or Media Foundation is called, which is decent, but it doesn't support as many codecs as AV Foundation on macOS.
Yep.
So I've instead, and again, this is one of the problems I actually ran into with AI, because AI just didn't build it in a way that I could like easily swap out different decoders and encoders and stuff. It was just like, here you go, we're just going to do it with Media Foundation, which didn't work for a lot of cases. So on Linux and Windows, I can swap depending. Windows has more support, but Linux uses just GStreamer, which is pretty much the de facto standard. It hooks into FFmpeg, and on Linux it's easy to ship FFmpeg because it's GPL on some of the codexes, so you can't actually bundle it in your application. But with a package manager, you can ensure that it's installed as you install your binary as well. By the way, if I'm going off on a ramble here, just interrupt me. Okay, cool. But with Windows, it's a little bit difficult because you can't just ship FFmpeg because it's GPL. You can only ship the LGPL version that you link to. So you have to kind of make use of Media Foundation and FFmpeg at the same time and have support for different codecs. Or it's mainly, I think, encoding is the issue when it comes to H.264 and H.265. But I'm getting deep in the technical weeds there.
No, it's great. Thanks for that.
Do you know all the stuff before making, is it Kiru?
Yeah, Kiru. I knew like parts of it, mostly because of working with video as YouTube, right? You get exposed to different codecs and things. And I used to do C++ quite heavily back in the day. And so I understood things about rendering and GPU and stuff. But when it came to more of that media pipeline stuff, I think that was just picked up through actually building the project.
Yeah, I would have thought you just get FFmpeg to do everything, but I guess not the case for different operating systems.
Yeah, you can get FFmpeg to do everything. It's challenging, and then again, you got the problem with licensing with FFmpeg. So it's
I guess it's okay if it's just a hobby project, but not a commercial application.
Yeah, unless you want to go GPL, which I didn't want to go GPL.
So I alluded to this offline, but you said in the video that you're going to focus full time on Rust, whereas most of your videos are talking about Go. So kind of explain why you moved from Go to Rust.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm very, I guess, bullish on Rust for 2026. And I think more companies are going to be moving towards it. Whereas adoption in the past has actually been kind of slow. I think there's always that meme, right? That getting a job in Rust is harder than learning the language itself. Because nobody's really hired for it in the past, apart from crypto companies, which I don't think most developers want to work within crypto. And I guess the other use cases of it in industry is usually when you're an established developer at a company already and you can make the argument for using Rust rather than them actually hiring Rust developers. So kind of as a YouTuber, it's always been very hard to talk about Rust from the point of like education because not many people are going to find a job in it. Now I think that's going to change because I think more companies that are embracing AI and LLMs and agentic engineering are realizing the drawbacks of this is instability, right? I think there's that classic project management triangle of, cheap, fast, or stability or quality or whatever. And we're now on the kind of cheap and fast, but we're sacrificing stability. And I think a lot of developers are trying to get back to that. And I think Rust is one of the ways of doing so, or using Rust. If you write correct Rust, it eliminates a whole class of potential bugs. So I think more companies are moving it. We've seen Bun do their 1 million line rewrite, which we'll see how that turns out. I think
that's a controversial one, that one.
Yeah, it's interesting, but we'll see how it turns out. But PNPM are also moving to Rust. They've just put that into the main branch. They're going to maintain, I think, 2 versions at the same time. I think Ladybird, the browser, they recently ported a bunch of C++ code into Rust as well. I think it's going to be a trend that we see more and more and more, which is why I'm so bullish about it. But also, I really like Rust. I think it's one of the 3 or 4 languages, maybe 4. I think it's one of the 4 languages that has no ceiling in that you can build pretty much anything with it. So for me, it's like always been very exciting. And I think now the future, it's even more exciting to know and learn it because I think there's going to be a lot more projects built using it.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think I've heard a few arguments about the compiler being slow and taking just being really pedantic, but I think it makes sense for AI. If AI is writing the codes and you leave AI to do it, then the checks are being done by the model and not so much you. But you can't say Rust is one of your top 4 languages without ceiling, without mentioning the other 3.
Yeah. Okay, so the other 3. So C, obviously, I think C is can do anything. It's probably the language without any ceiling. Zig, I think, is on there. Even though I think my issue with Zig is it's still very early days for the language. So it changes quite a lot. And even documentation from the last version, if you try to go and do like a hello world, it doesn't work with the latest version 0.16, which is kind of difficult and challenging to learn. If you can get through that, I think people really find the language rewarding. And Zig has a lot of benefits in that its interoperability with C is incredible. Like, yeah, it's if you like FFI, then it's fantastic. The 3rd language, obviously Rust. And then the 4th language is C++. I think C++ has no ceiling as well. You can do absolutely anything with that language. I have like a lot of bias towards C++ because I spent the majority of my career writing it. So I love the language. That's not a lot of people do like the language. It has a lot of ugly parts, but it's also able to do anything. Some
people would, I think, throw C and C++ in the same bucket because, it's just like a step forward.
Now, I was gonna say on the Zig point as well, I think sort of it being newer was one of the reasons Bun moved away because they said they were making a lot of PRs to the Zig project itself, trying to fix the issues because people would complain to them that Bun was crashing. They'd realize it was a Zig bug, and that's why they moved to Rust and hope that it clears some of their bugs up, basically, and the crashes that Bun was having. And Open Code, I think, had quite a few crashes because it was built on Bun and then turned out it was Zig's fault and all of that. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see how that rewrite turns out.
Yeah, me too. I think it's interesting. It's not how I would have rewritten the project. But I think it's for the sake of science and figuring out if that's possible. I think it's very interesting to see as an observer. I think there's a lot of debate about, there's downstream dependencies on Bun. A lot of companies build on top of Bun and stuff. So I think maybe slightly reckless, but if it turns out well, maybe not. So we'll see.
Well, it's like the timeline was something like 7 days ago. He tweeted he was doing it as an experiment, and then 7 days later merged a 1,000,000-line PR into main, which is that's an insane experiment. It's good marketing material for Claude if it does work out.
Yeah,
They've got a great story there.
Yeah. As somebody who always advocated for smaller PRs, it kind of hurts a little bit. But yeah, we'll see how it turns out. I think it's very exciting to see from an observer point of view. But I do feel for the people that are kind of dependent on Bun and worried about what this might do to, their code bases.
Yeah, I think I saw a tweet from Dax today saying that Open Code isn't going to upgrade to the new version for a while because it's just very untrusted for now.
Yep.
I think I've got a few questions about your language choices, and also I'm interested in the way that you use AI, because you said you got AI to build a lot of it at first, but then you kind of went back and fixed the difficult things. So when you said you fixed them, are you the person who will prompt it to fix itself, or would you write the code by hand, or do you do both?
Both. So it really depends on what I'm trying to fix. A lot of it is like architectural issues. I think the weird thing about AI and Rust is if you just prompt it and let it go, it will just put everything in the main.rs file. So I ended up with like a 20,000 line main.rs file before I was like, okay, I got to start again from scratch here because this is terrible. So it's very bad at architectural decisions. Like, and again, it's that point of trying to get there as fast as possible or as efficiently when it comes to token cost as possible. It doesn't consider the long-term project as a point of consideration when it's trying to make decisions. So delegating decisions to it, I think, has been terrible. And so I've had to do a lot of those architectural decisions, go back and then work with it on actually implementing those. Some of it's been me rewriting it or writing at least some of the stub and being like, okay, now go fill this in and make it look like this, or defining the actual files that I want, which parts should go in which files, and then it goes and does that refactoring for me. So a lot of the typing automation, I think, is where I kind of lean on it now. It's how I like to use it, just to automate that typing for me, and then I will still make the architectural decisions. I'll still review the code, and if something is completely dumb, I'll ask it to rewrite it again, or sometimes pick at it myself. Whenever it's learning a new concept, that's when I'll do that by hand, because I think you can't learn something well if you don't write it yourself. So I actually played around with a few different Rust front-end frameworks. I'm using GPUI by the Z team, but using GPUI component, which is a fantastic framework. And before letting AI touch that, I went and learned it and implemented a small app myself, because I think that's the easiest way to understand how it works, rather than just using AI to do that. And then you just don't really get an understanding of, when the entire window is being refreshed, when a component is being refreshed, or when you need to refresh the entire application or whatever, which is part of the three contexts that GPUI component provides. But I also played with the other desktop frameworks like Iced and eGUI, and again, did the same process. I had to write the code manually to understand how they worked, what I liked about it, whether it would actually suit my needs.
Sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. I've found that to be a similar experience. Like if you were to build a product yourself, just kind of have your coding conventions and the way you like to write code in place. And then if the AI were to add more features to it, it kind of matches your style instead of it going off and doing its own thing. So I think, you messing around with things first to know how you like to structure the code will help kind of the AI do it correctly in the long run. So and I also like the idea of using stubs. I've never thought about doing that. So do you have like empty functions or like,
yep.
I don't know if they have interface. Oh, okay, fine. So empty functions and then it just fills it in. Nice.
Yeah. So sometimes one thing I've always done, and this comes from C++. So C++ requires you to write header files, right? So that's the first thing. And I hate header files, but they're actually very good for one specific thing, which is defining your public interface. So you go through that, you create your class file, you define what it looks like and what functions are public. And that is your contract, which is a really nice way of working because it allows you to abstract, okay, what do I want people to call into this function? And I found LLMs just don't really have that same thought process again, obviously. And so I kind of replicate that with Rust as well. I define, this is the struct I want. This is kind of the public interface I want. Don't make sure the code fits that rather than just exporting everything, which is something it loves to do. It just loves to make everything public, which is, stupid. So yeah, that's one of the ways I like to do it, define that kind of stub, that public interface, and then let the AI fill in all the implementation detail.
Cool. I like that. I think I might try it in a future project.
Does it work? Because sometimes I feel like I've seen in the reasoning phase where it wants to take a shortcut, like, oh, let me simplify this. And then it could go back to the header file and change something over there. Yeah. Have you had that experience?
Oh, so many times. Yeah, this is one of the things, I don't think AI automation is going to happen. I mean, it could happen, but I don't think we're ever going to see humans not interacting with it or just like letting it rip and then feeding it a prompt and letting it rip again. Because the amount of times I have to stop it doing something when I see it's going down a path that I don't want it to, there's just no way I could ever trust it to do something without human interaction. So, and again, I think there's a level of trivialness to this. I think like really, really simple toy applications, or like sometimes I just need a CLI to like convert one format to another. I'm not going to write that. I'm just going to trust AI to do it. But anything production related or something I want to maintain later on, I want to be very involved in what the AI is doing just to kind of steer it in the correct direction. So yes, to answer your question, it absolutely loves to try to break the constraints you put in, because it's just guidelines to the AI, right? So I'm very active. I always read the output as it's coming through and try to stop it doing something I don't want it to. I also make use of Git staging quite a lot as well. Whenever I'm happy with a direction, I stage the changes, and then if it goes and does something, I'll be very happy to commit to revert back to that stage.
That's actually a good technique.
It's annoying when you forget to do it. That's probably, I'd love to see more ability to be able to roll back to certain stages, because I think right now it's very manual. I'd love a way for me to be able to go back to what it was at this message before everything broke.
I don't know. I feel like VS Code has this option with inside the, but it's an IDE, so you can go back to a checkpoint and then it's gonna like erase what it did before. I don't know how it's in other IDEs.
I thought Claude Code did have a feature like that, but I think I've used work trees mostly in a similar approach of staging stuff like you.
Yeah, there is a way to do it in Claude. It's a bit hidden, but I think if you press escape twice, then you can have a look at the previous chats and you can go back to a checkpoint. But yeah,
does it allow you to go
the
code back to that checkpoint?
I haven't tried that. No, I tend to just say, can you reverse what you've just done? And it does that. But I guess depending on how far down you are, it's difficult to kind of go back up to say reverse back to like 10 messages ago.
Yeah. So that's what I'd really like. I use Codecs mostly these days, the Codex CLI. But I'd love it if they would actually checkpoint the code at each message as well before the changes, so you could revert the patches. It does as well. I'm
actually curious, how did you decide to use Codex and not Claude Code?
So I used Claude Code for the longest time. This is going to be me being biased. So I really don't like TypeScript tools in my CLI. So as soon as Codex, I saw it was written in Rust, I was like, okay, I need to move to something. Mainly because, one, Rust, I was finding Codex and OpenCode as well, actually. I was finding that we're using a lot of memory when it came to Rust Analyzer, which Codex just wasn't running into that issue. And so that was one of the big parts. The performance of it was a little bit nicer. And since 5.2 with Codex, I've been using Codex exclusively. I haven't found Claude Code to be as good. It's faster, or it was faster, but it always it was much more high touch. It required a lot more working with it in order to get things correct. Whereas Codex has been better, not recently for some reason. I've been running into a lot of issues with it recently, but for the most part, it has been better than Claude Code. So I just used Codex I just used Codex instead.
I think you've touched upon a question that I was going to ask you, which is when you spoke about your 4 languages without any ceiling, I remember you made a video about how much you liked writing TypeScript, and I guess that's particularly for front-end stuff. And it's interesting that you said that you don't like having CLI tools written in TypeScript, because I agree. I guess they have to bring a whole runtime with them, which slows things down and takes a lot of memory. But I've noticed there's a lot of tools, like I guess Tauri 2, there's also Electrobun, and I think Zero Native from Vercel, which is basically you create a native app using a web view, and it kind of wraps it up. And some of them are like, it's a bit weird to think about it. It's like, why are you writing web code in a native way? Some of them have actually been quite performant, even though they hog a lot of memory. So there is a tool called X.js, which replicates a terminal in the web. And so someone has built their own terminal, a native terminal, by using the web terminal and making it native using like Tauri. And it's like a roundabout way of making a terminal. But it works. And so I'd love to know your thought on that direction of where things are going.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a lot of thoughts about this. Again, as somebody who's done C++, I've always preferred more native tooling rather than kind of using a virtual machine or using kind of like browser tools as well. So I'm very biased against those sorts of tools. But the way I like to say it is Electron, Electric Bun, Zero Native, they're good for the developer, but not as good for the user. So they're very easy to ship with. They're very easy to get a cross-platform experience with. And they do make it a lot easier for the developer to be able to ship faster, which could be argued is actually better for the user because they get a product to market quicker. But I think for me, I much prefer the performance you get when it comes to more native tools, although it's harder as a developer to actually build for them. Now, a lot of people actually don't mind. So it's more of me being quite picky and having strong personal preferences of wanting more native tools. And I wish companies would respect resources on computers a little bit more as well, because it's, as computers have gotten more powerful, software hasn't gotten as powerful. Like we're just a bit more wasteful when it comes to the code we write these days, because we don't have to think about it. We don't have to think about constrained memory or anything. But when you went back to kind of like iOS development back at the beginning, we had there was very little RAM to work with, so you had to be very constrained and thoughtful about how you would deploy or develop for mobile apps. And I think it'd be nice if we still had that kind of scarcity mindset when it comes to actually building applications, because we can be like, okay, let's not just allocate a bunch of memory for no good reason, and actually think about respecting users' resources and what machines they're on, et cetera, et cetera. But that's, again, not pedantic is the word, but I'm being difficult because of that, just because of my personal preferences. And I think it is much easier to build Electron apps. It's a lot easier to build kind of these hybrid web view apps than it is to build native in this day and age. And I think time to market is an important decision in our industry. And unfortunately, that is the way we are.
I think I was reading on like a sort of tangent, a similar article to something you were saying was about video games and how if you look at like the PS2, PS1, the amount of like tricks the developers were doing to take advantage of the limited memory they had was insane. And there was all kinds of like funky tricks. And now it's just like, yeah, just ship a 200 gigabyte game and it will run. It will run on a PS5. That's fine.
And to be fair, it is nice that you don't have to resort to all these tricks and everything else to actually solve these problems. I think it makes things a bit more accessible from a developer point of view, because, if you want to just ship a good product or a good game, you don't want to be thinking about, everything that I need to do to make this work in a constrained system. But I think there's probably a middle ground that we could have, like maybe a bit of thinking about how to make this performant without burning GPU cycles, at the same time of, how to make this easy to ship without having to do very weird tricks.
Yeah, it's actually like a similar problem I'm having with Claude Code, obviously burning a lot of memory, is my Mac now gets really hot and the battery life dies so quickly. So I'm now looking at the best sort of remote workflow there is to offload Claude Code somewhere in the cloud, but I still haven't settled on what that looks like yet.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. And I think, depending on what compute resources look like in the near future, I think that's also a consideration as well. And we're seeing, more affordable laptops come to the market, like the MacBook Neo, which are obviously underpowered as well. I've actually got one hopefully being shipped soon, so I can test my video editor on it. If it can run on that, I'll be very happy. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what the future of compute looks like if we continue to be supply constrained. I think NVIDIA just put out some ridiculous call for the amount of energy that they need for the future of AI. So we'll see. We'll see. I think I'm really hesitant to make predictions because usually they're wrong. But I think if compute gets more resource constrained, it would be definitely something developers should think more about of like, okay, how do I make sure this runs on weaker hardware?
But even in AI, there's like this whole push now of model quantization, how a lot of developers are taking these big 35 billion parameter models and trying to, compress them as much as you can so you can actually run them on your local MacBooks. So I think that's a cool space to be in and follow and see how developers can actually, squeeze out every bit of performance you can get out of that.
Yeah, that community is absolutely wild. The self-hosted LLM community. Alex Siskind, if you've ever watched any of his stuff, he's the one who always links up Mac Studios and Mac Minis and stuff. Yeah, they do some really cool things.
But you yourself, do you use a Mac or a Linux machine?
I use both, annoyingly. So I mainly use a MacBook Pro at the moment. I use Linux as well because I'm like a big fan of NixOS. I think it's probably the perfect Linux distribution ever made, in my opinion. It's challenging. It's much easier with AI because you can get AI to actually help you with your configuration. And I love declarative configurations anyway. I really like Kubernetes for infrastructure. I love NixOS for computers. Nix Darwin on macOS is pretty decent. It's not as good as NixOS, so it makes it tolerable. But when it comes to video and things, there's nothing like a MacBook really, or macOS. It's the best platform for video, so it's mostly why I use it these days.
Also seems like nearly every new AI tool and everything just cares about Mac now. Like Windows has been forgotten by a lot of these startups. Every product's like, yeah, we just have a Mac app, deal with it.
Yep.
Well, on the topic of video, I think you have a really good kind of filming setup. You've got good lights, good cameras, and I don't know how you do it, but you never or you rarely seem to screen record. You actually record your screen with a camera, and I've tried it and I just get a lot of glare. Like, what's your secret?
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. So you have to put the light at the same angle as the camera, unless it's face on. If it's on the sideways, you put the light behind the camera, and then you don't get that glare. I actually bought the nano texture MacBook to help with that as well, because that does a good job of reducing the glare. Or if you're filming straight on, you have to put it down, so above it to light it.
Okay.
Or from behind is even better if you can get that kind of the angle working. But yeah, it's interesting. Screen recordings, I would love to do more screen recordings, but I find there's a big drop off of viewership. As soon as you show code on a coding channel, there's a drop off because it's not as interesting to see somebody's screen. And I think the nice thing as well about cinema and video is you have a depth of field, so it draws your eye to what you should be looking at. Whereas when you do a screen recording, that doesn't exist because everything's in focus. And so I think that's also one of the big challenges of showing screen recordings. Whereas when you show an actual camera recording a screen, you can again use depth of focus to show what people should be looking at.
Speaking of depth of field, you have a very nice depth of field on your setup right now. So I'm curious, actually, what's your camera model that you're using, and what's the lens that you're using?
Yeah, so for my A roll, this is a permanent setup, basically. I have the FX30, which is decent for A roll, and I use a Sigma 23 lens, I believe it is, 23 millimeter, which is equivalent 35 on a full frame. And then I have it f-stop.
What's the
down
f-stop?
1.4, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's why.
It's like a paper credit card's width of focus that you get. But fortunately, Sony's autofocus is pretty decent.
And for B-roll, do you use a different camera?
I use the FX3 for B-roll, just because it works very well in low light. So I have a macro lens as well that I use for it at some points. And using a macro lens with a low ISO and then high wide aperture it's impossible to focus on anything because it's like that paper width of field of focus that you get. So the nice thing about the FX3 is you can crank it up to 12,800 ISO, and then you can crank up the f-stop quite high as well, so you can get a good focus on a macro lens, which is nice when you're really, really zoomed into to code on screen.
Did you learn all of this for YouTube, or have you always sort of had a passion for camera and stuff?
If you can't tell, I like to go deep on things when I get into them. So I actually did photography back in college in the UK. So I did a photography A-level. And so I learned a lot of that then never applied. I did nightclub photography when I was at university, and then never really applied it after that. And then got back into video. And again, it kind of, that old knowledge came back around. It's like that famous Steve Jobs quote of, when you're somewhere, you do all these things in life, all these little random things, and then you have no idea how they connect until later on, and then you can look back and see like, oh yeah, all of this applied to where I am today.
Sorry, one more question about the setup. Are you using an auto-focusing feature, or is it fixed?
So for A row, I use autofocus.
Okay, yeah.
For B row, I use manual focus.
Yeah, it's really good. Like you never go out of focus. So I guess Sony has good auto-focusing abilities. Nice.
Yeah, they're pretty excellent.
I noticed you've got a hair light as well, but it's out of frame. Have you got multiple lights?
Yeah, I got like the sun here, I call it, which is like this giant softbox. I got hair light. I got like a few little Amaran lights here, and then some other accent lighting behind as well.
Nice. Yeah, it looks good. It's amazing how people set up develops over time. Just like there's lights and tripods and things you have to buy.
It's so important as well. Also, like getting the angle of the light is important, which is something I recently found. Like if it's top down, it makes you look a bit more tired because you get like big shadows under your eyes and stuff. So now it's like almost perpendicular.
So what's the typical like day for you? Because I don't know if you're developing for a company or you're just like full-time YouTube or you're doing your own thing. Like what's the typical day?
Yeah, I should do a day in the life, really, shouldn't I? I think we need another one of those. So what do I do? I don't work as a full-time developer anymore. I haven't really told anybody this, but I kind of got out as soon as I saw like AI coming about because I didn't like the look of where things were going. But I've always struggled with the industry anyway. I've worked at a few really, really good places, but I don't know what it is, but over the last 5 years, we saw more of a push towards bureaucracy in the industry. I think with like Scrum leaders and things where it was taking away from the actual development of more of like the planning. And planning is important. I'm not going to discourage it, but it felt like we had moved away towards getting things done quickly, a lot of meetings to make sure we were getting things done quickly. And it kind of like took away from the actual software development aspects of it as well. And I think with AI, that's probably worse. I don't think many developers are happy at the moment with the job market and how it is working in the industry. And I get it. I think I wouldn't enjoy it either at the moment. So I decided to go do YouTube full time in 2014 as a way of like being able to still be creative, still be able to work on code that I want to at the same time as well, and hopefully get paid for it. So I'm like a full-time YouTuber, but I'm a part-time YouTuber because I don't make enough YouTube videos that I should be making. So instead, I build products. I like to code at my own time. I still like to keep learning. So mainly, I'm like my typical day in the life is going online, reading what people are saying, kind of understanding trends, thinking of video ideas to do about those trends, and then still coding, still learning, still trying to understand software development.
Sorry, did I hear that correctly? 2014, you went full-time on YouTube?
2024, sorry.
I was
Oh,
thinking
okay.
that as well, but, yeah.
Sorry, that's my mistake.
He's a veteran.
So the whole like the things you do now, so YouTube sponsorship, products, that's enough to fund your lifestyle, or do you do like, I don't know, a bit contracting on the side? Like what's your makeup of money?
Yeah, so it's all through YouTube and sponsorships and then product sales as well. So it is enough. I could probably earn a lot more if I went and worked for Anthropic or something, right? They're paying huge amounts of money. But it's definitely enough to like survive on and actually, do reasonably well and be comfortable with as well. I could earn a lot more money if I was just a bit more focused, but that's my own focus issues. But yeah, it works. It pays the bills.
I'm going to say from the outside looking in, you do seem very focused because you've got these products and you've got these things you're learning and these videos you're making. And the videos, I'm sure, take a long time to do because you shoot from so many different angles and I'm sure editing takes a while. So yeah, you seem like you're productive from the outside.
Thank you. I do not feel it from the inside.
So what are some of your hot takes in the industry?
I've got so many, but I share them quite frequently.
You have mentioned a few already, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. I think it was a hot take earlier that like Rust was going to be so prominent this year, but I don't think it's that hot anymore. My hot take last year was that more people are going to be writing code using agents, but again, that's kind of come through. What is going to be my hot take or hot prediction, I guess? I think my hot take is that we're reaching the point of diminishing returns with LLMs. And I think We're not going to see much more. This prediction could go wrong. I don't think we're going to see much more improvement than where we are currently when it comes to at least the models. Maybe in the tooling we will, but not necessarily in the models.
So you don't believe Claude Mythos is this magically perfect model?
I think it's great. I think it's probably very expensive. And I think, again, in the land of diminishing returns, right? I don't think it's available for consumers because I just don't think it's cost effective for consumers. I think we'll maybe see more companies go down that enterprise route of like, okay, here's some really expensive models to use. But I don't think consumers will see them because, again, I think the amount they cost to run will not be equivalent to the amount of output we get from them. That's kind of my hot take. I also think 2027 we'll see the winding down of AI marketing from companies.
Do you mean AI marketing as in them using AI to market, or as in making several AI tools and saying like, look how much AI we have?
Yeah, more of like kind of the AI products of like, or adding AI into products and kind of making it like AI is a big game changer. And I think the reason for that is because consumers don't want it. And they've shown that many times that they're just not that happy with AI being sprinkled into everything. And I think at some point, I mean, I could be wrong though. This is it. It's like, it could be just a complete bubble. So it's a prediction that could go either way. But yeah, I think we're going to start seeing it slowly die down. I think the hype will come to an end in 2027.
Yeah, I think I can agree with you in the form of a chat interface. It's like everything does not need to be a chat interface, guys. And like the classic demo everyone uses of like booking travel and hotels through ChatGPT or some chat interface, it's like, I like to check them out. Yep. So I don't want to book my whole holiday by saying ChatGPT go. So yeah, I think I can agree.
Or like
with you
in Windows, not every feature needs a Copilot button.
I saw a list of how many Copilots they have the other day, and it was insane. It was like 70 plus different products named Copilot.
Wow.
Mental.
What are your guys' hot takes?
It's never been flipped on us before, that question.
Yeah, never been.
We're not prepared.
I know, that's a good question. I think it has to be more AI. I'm glad you went down the AI route for the hot take, because I was going to talk more about AI. But I don't know. If I had a hot take...
My one would be, as much as I like terminal UIs, they're not it for me. I like the Codex app, and I've used it a lot more. And T3 Code by Theo was really good, except Claude sort of ripped out the subscription model in that, so that's a bit annoying. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think we need to... I think similar to what I said earlier, chat interfaces need to go for a lot of things. Like we need a better interface. I don't know what that looks like. And also your terminal UIs, they're great, but I think they can only get you so far with multi-agent workflows and things.
My hot take is that with all this unpredictable pricing that Claude is doing, Anthropic, and everyone else, is I think there's going to be more push towards local setups and local models. And I think with all the rising prices of GPUs, I think this is a good time to buy like a local good graphics card for yourself until the prices go even higher. So you have that local setup in case you can't afford the cloud anymore.
I think my anti sort of take on that would be that a lot of consumers don't care and they're just going to keep paying the money for the higher and higher subscription.
But there comes a point, like...
There does, I suppose, but I suppose it's more if you can get an enterprise to pay for it, as we said earlier, they're just going to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. For a local, sort of individual person using it, maybe. But then I'm not sure students can afford the current GPU prices anyway.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken to a few kind of normies, and some of them contrast it, who have money, they contrast it to, I could pay for a developer, but it's quicker to pay, or cheaper to pay the $200 max plan to Claude and get Claude to do the work. So I guess it's a case of trying to educate and say it's good, but doesn't actually do as good as a job as a developer would.
We need your hot take, Richard. We haven't.
Yeah, no, I'm still thinking. I honestly have no idea. So it has to be AI related. I think so. So one thing that I've seen a lot that's really cool is when using Claude Code. I don't know if this happens in Codex, but if I'm like, hey, Claude Code, I want to build something. What do you recommend? Like what kind of? So say I want to do some kind of. I want to host a website that I've made. Where should I host it? And it will mention products that I don't expect. Like it wouldn't mention AWS or DigitalOcean. It would mention Fly.io, Railway, sometimes for sale. And there's something that they're doing to get it to do that. And some people call it agent experience. I don't know what it is. But like this will be the new SEO. Like people will not focus on H1s and all that stuff. There are things you can say to the model to get it to recommend your product. And I think people will figure it out at some point, or people are hacking it, and that will be a thing in the future.
Do you think that will be the downfall of the user experience of AI, though, when people can work out how to trick it?
Yes and no. So the tricking is quite tricky.
Yeah.
No pun intended. But there's a lot of like a LLM TXT and MD files and stuff you have to put in your robots.txt to get it to do that, and it takes a while. But in terms of user experience, if you can say, hey, Claude, can you help me set up a, I don't know, Google Cloud account, sort out my API keys and all that stuff, and it does it in a kind of secure way, then it saves people going through the dashboard of these huge cloud tools and makes things a bit easier that way. So yeah, we'll see. But that's my kind of not so hot take.
It's an interesting one, that one. I had like a treadmill thought the other day about it, of if everybody's using AI to like get directions on product decisions or architecture or infrastructure, are we going to see like a convergence of ideas, and then suddenly to be more innovative and rely on your own intuition, that's going to set you apart from like the commonality? So I think it's the same reason why I think it's good to learn to code at the moment, is that if you can rely on yourself rather than relying on AI to answer some of these questions, then you may have a competitive advantage compared to everybody else who's just following the same advice from prompts.
Yeah, I mean, there is like a convergence of products already. Like people are using Vercel a lot because AI is recommending it, Superbase, Resend, and so yeah, it's happening already at a slow pace. And I guess if you do know how these things work, you can kind of pick the best tools. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I've never heard of a treadmill thought, by the way, but it makes complete sense. I know what you mean. I always call it a shower thought still, even when it's not in the shower.
Yeah.
I'm going to start using that one.
Most of my thoughts come on the treadmill.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Better Start podcast. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and with that out of the way, it's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.